Hello everyone and thanks for joining. So today we've got this little tiny shunter to have a look at. It's from Bachmann. It's number 31336 in their range and it's a British Railways class 04 under the top system, but this one is actually numbered D2334. It's a second-hand model, but it does look in pretty good condition, and it's also quite a modern release, certainly by comparison to some of the stuff that I review on this channel. So we're going to have a closer look at it today. So this is quite a small little model, but then the Class 04 Shunter locomotive is quite small as well. So we'll start off having a closer look at the front, and obviously the wasp stripes are the most noticeable thing here. They're done not too bad, but there is a bit of fuzziness between the yellow and the black. But it does have this additional part, a little lamp up here, as well as another three down here. This one has actually had the top of this one just broken off, which is a bit of a shame there. And also the buffer beam here, bright yellow, but it does look as though it has a crack on this one running the whole length of it, which is a bit strange. It's got a dummy hook there. It's an additional part that's been added in, and these buffers as well, which are sprung loaded as well, which is a real nice touch. You will see though that these are in little plastic sleeves, and they're in yellow plastic as well, but they're a different colour of yellow than the buffer beam. And then we have this coupling hanging out the front, not as bad as some Hornby ones, but it's a very similar style. So the painting at the front of this locomotive isn't really that good. And looking down the side here, we do have a handrail here picked out in white. It's part of the main moulding, it's not an additional part. And we have this handrail up here, which again is part of the moulding. This one's been picked out in yellow, but it is a bit sloppy around the top here, and the masking isn't too good. There's another handrail running the whole length of the locomotive here, and again that is part of the main moulding. It isn't an extra piece, it's been added in. So it is a little bit crude there. Moulding isn't too good, and the one at the back there has got some flash on it as well. Down the side here though, there is a good representation of rivet detail, and these doors are very nicely defined with the grills on them, and it has these electrical warning flashes. And then as we look at the cab, it has these extra handrails added on in plastic. These look as though they're a bit bashed on this model. Certainly this one at the back here is broken, and it looks as though this one here is broken as well. So they're obviously very fragile, but there's three of them there which look really good. The printing of these transfers, the British Rail logo there and the number D2334, that's done pretty good, I think. It's a little bit fuzzy on the numbering. And then looking at the back of the locomotive, it's certainly the wasp stripes that catch your eye here, and that's obviously what they're meant to do. Again, this paintwork isn't that good, especially around these lamps where there is a lot of fuzziness, especially on this one at the side here. The buffer beam doesn't have a crack down it on this side, which is good, but you can see that it also has that problem with the buffer colour being a slightly different yellow than the buffer beam. It has a nice vacuum pipe here, which is white and black. That's a nice part that's been added on there. I'm not quite sure why there isn't one on the front. And it has another handrail here as an extra part. This is very fine, this one. And it's a shame that the one running down the side of the bonnet isn't as fine as this one. The glazing on this model isn't flush fit, but it's not too bad, and it's moulded here with a mark down the middle of it to look as though it's a split window. It's very clear, you can see inside, and we do have a driver there at the controls. The roof up here is painted black, and it has some nice rivet detail as well. There's a very well defined horn added on there as an extra part, and then running down the nose here, there's not a lot of detail on here, but there is this hatch in the middle with some rivet detail, these couple of little studs here. And this exhaust pipe up here has got some nice rivet detail around it as well. It looks quite good actually, quite characterful. So looking down below, we've got this plastic part here with some pieces moulded into it, including these steps and these tanks. This part here is part of the chassis, which is metal, and it has these little sanding pipes here as well, and they're made of metal, so they're quite sturdy and they're not going to break off, which is good. And then we've got the very characterful wheels on this locomotive, which are all metal and painted black, and we have the connecting rod here painted in yellow, and that's a metal part as well. And we have the drive part at the back here, which has been also faithfully modelled underneath the steps here. Not much else underneath. You can see Bachmann made in China. So I think maybe we could take this apart with these two screws and we can have a look at the mechanism. Okay, that was quite interesting. I originally thought it was the two screws in the middle that took this apart, but that actually only just took this plate off so you can see the wheels and the gears here. And it was actually the screws that were holding the couplings on, which were longer and holding the actual model together. But it does give us a chance to have a look here that we've got the drive in the middle here and everything else is just being driven by the connecting rod. It looks like a plastic gear there, and the motor must be inside here. It's quite a neat design because this is all made of metal, therefore it gives it enough weight. And here's the body shell without the chassis. You can see inside here we have the driver, but I thought it had some controls there, but there's actually nothing on there at all, nothing molded whatsoever. I hope for a bit better from Bachmann. So quite interesting. Let's get this back together and we'll give it a test. Okay, so nothing complicated in getting this model back together, and we've got it now on the test track. Let's give it some power and see what happens. Well, it's certainly not the best runner in the world because it kind of wobbles when it goes down the track. And also, it's so highly geared as well. You just give it a little bit of power and it shoots off, just really unprototypical. It didn't have any problems with stuttering on this crappy track that I've got, but it just doesn't seem to be as good as I think it should be. Anyway, let's put this on the scales and we'll see how much it weighs. So this locomotive weighs 205 grams. So this Class 4 diesel shunter from Bachmann, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag really. It's a very characterful little locomotive and it looks really quite cool. The moulding is fairly good, but there's quite a bit of difference in handrails, especially down the bonnet at the front compared to the one at the back here. I think this would have been much better if it just had more fine handrails on it, but there are two things that really let it down, and that's the quality of the paintwork on it. It's really quite sloppily done, especially at the front, and also the way this performs. It just really doesn't work very well. It has that feeling that it's been made to a budget and therefore it just ends up feeling a little bit cheap and a bit rubbishy. You could imagine that it's possibly been aimed at somebody a bit younger or is maybe just starting out with their first model railway items. And yet the handrails on the doors are made of such delicate plastic that it's just going to break if it's handled too clumsily. So I can't quite figure out who this model is aimed at. It's certainly not the serious collector or somebody looking for something really high quality. It is a bit of a shame because this is actually better than the Hornby version, which is saying a lot, but I probably wouldn't recommend this against other shunting locomotives that you could get unless you particularly wanted a Class 04. Let me know what you thought about my analysis of this model in the comments below. I'd love to know. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps this channel grow. I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See ya!